Hello. If you've stumbled on this video by accident, just know that this video is not any sort of a tutorial or an instruction video. This is a video made by Casey for Casey when Casey inevitably forgets things that he's learned for future reference. So this video assumes you know what Casey knows at the point of now and remembers what Casey does. So anyway, I'm Casey by the way. So let's get started. Um, so I was playing around with Spring Boot and Spring Boot applications. Created an app today morning. Actually, created an app yesterday, which is a simple to-do application. This simple to-do application started out with a task model. Then it has a task status enum, which is used in the task model for setting the status. Then it has a repository. This is just a JPA repository, and the JPA repository offers all the CRUD operations to work with the database. Speaking of the database, in application.properties, there's H2 database. So we have the data source, then we have the driver class, and then the database URL, and also in the form.xml there's the H2 database that's been added. So H2 database is the in-memory database, right? So it has no sort of persistence. Once the application closes, all the data is lost. Then following the repository, there's the task service. So this service has different methods for creating a task, getting tasks by ID, getting all the tasks, updating and deleting tasks. So this takes a task repository. So this is what is called a Spring injection. So that means there's a task repository bean that gets created and that gets injected into the task service bean when it's created, and then the various methods are used to perform various operations on the side. Then after the task service, then we have the controller, which takes the task service as an injected bean, and in the controller we have different endpoints and different methods which are used to perform different actions. So when you go to the root, you have the view tasks method, which takes a model which is a Spring Framework model, and it adds an attribute. So the attribute's name is tasks, and you use task service to get all tasks, and then you store them in this tasks variable. Then return task list. So this is a time leaf template. So if you go to task list.html, so this is the time leaf template. So doc type HTML, which means this is HTML5. This is indicating that this is going to be a time leaf template. Then this th colon each is this is a time leaf attribute. So this is an iterator. So this is a local variable task. It's going to iterate over all the tasks, and it's going to get these different things from the task, like task or title, description, status, and it's going to display them in the task list. So similarly, there are other HTML/timeleaf templates. And to make this all look pretty, I have some CSS file. I have a CSS file here, style.css, that's linked into these HTML files. So now, having done this, I understood that when you start an application, you start with a model, then you create a repository, then you create a service, then you create a controller. So if you want to learn more about how the repository works and why we use the JPA repository here, but first of all, this entire application was generated by ChatGPT. I think my prompt was something along the lines of teach me Spring Boot with a simple application, and then I had to generate different ideas for applications, and I chose this one because it made the most sense to me. But if I were to learn if I want to look up reference for this, I would look up Spring in Action by Craig Walls, and there's a chapter in this called Data Persistence or Data JPA, and yeah, Java Persistence with Spring Data and Hibernate. So I would take a look at that chapter once again, and probably understand what is happening in terms of the CRUD repository stuff, etc. Sorry, GPA repository, CRUD operations, etc. Okay, so that was a long introduction to this video, or this session, whatever. The reason I want to make this session is I did not have a lot of knowledge about these TH colon stuff. So I know HTML. It starts. I mean, I know HTML. That's kind of a really broad thing. I don't know everything about HTML. I know some things about HTML. So I know it has an HTML. You have an opening and closing tag, and then there's a header tag where you have metadata about the HTML file itself, and you have a body tag where you have all the data that gets rendered onto the screen. And when the web browsers render the data, they create a DOM, which is a DOM or DOM, which is called a document object model, and you have different selectors for the document object model in JavaScript. Yeah, I still have this open. Sweet. Okay, so this is a basic HTML file. So this basic HTML file has a header and a body. This body has this line called script. The reason this is at the end is you want the JavaScript to run after all your HTML elements. Apparently there's some way to overcome that, but I never read that far into the tutorial. So this is looking for a script.js file. Now the script.js file, this document here refers to this HTML, not the HTML file, but the HTML file as rendered by the browser. Get element by ID. Now this DOM thing apparently has a tree-like structure, and you use you can either there are different get element methods. So here we have get element by ID, so we use name. There are other ways to get elements by using the same selectors as in CSS, where if you were selecting the entire tag, you use this. If you're selecting like a class, it's a dot and then the class name. And if you're selecting like an ID, then it's pound sign and then the ID, right? Let me go back here. Okay, so here we're getting this name, we're getting this tag, and then inside this tag we are setting the inner text is equal to Casey. So when we open, let me open this in File Explorer. So when we open this, so we get this, welcome to my first site, Casey, and Casey is read from JavaScript. Okay, so now let's talk about Thymeleaf. So from what I understand, Thymeleaf is a templating engine for Java, and it's used extensively with the Spring Boot and Spring frameworks. So the modern side Java template engine for both web and standalone environments. Um, I did go through two documents here. One was this using Thymeleaf document, and when you're going through using Thymeleaf, there was a really nice blog page that they had linked to. Let me see if I can find that again. Um, so there was a blog page that talked about how we've come about to using HTML5 and what were the issues with the previous HTMLs, XMLs, XHTML. Um, can't seem to find the link. I believe is it in Thymeleaf 2.1? Oh, there we go. Before going any further, you should read this. And this is from HTML to HTML by HTML. So it explains how there was first HTML. Then this explains how we had some tag stuff. Then XML was supposed to be text-based language, and it's supposed to be a better version of HTML. Then HTML plus XML formed XHTML, and so every time we include this doc type HTML, that's kind of for the backward compatibility. Now, XHTML had one issue. They had something called like the draconian error handling, so it wouldn't let any faulty code run. Whereas HTML kind of has this nice, even if you have errors, run the code kind of a philosophy. Then W3C was the initial organization that came up with the HTML, XML, XHTML format. And then a couple of companies formed another alliance, the Opera Group, the Mozilla, and Apple. And they formed the Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group. Brilliant acronym, what WG. And then later they made up, and now the W3 and W80WG are working together on HTML5, and probably the only feature of web standards. Okay, so this still supports XHTML5. Anyway, it's not the reason why that was an interesting read was I often wondered why we add the exclamation doc type HTML at the beginning, and that explains the reason for that. Apparently, before there was something called DTD, or yeah, DTD, so which stood for um, document type definition, and you would normally include that in the beginning, but now DTD is no longer supported or required. So anyway, going further with Timeleaf. So yeah, I read this using Timeleaf. This is a lot of depth here. So as soon as I read it, I immediately forgot all of it. There's another easier, quick 5 minute intro getting started with the standard dialects. I guess the most important things to know are these 5 things. Variable expressions are commonly used. Then after you use variable expressions, you use a bunch of literals and operations, just like in any coding language, and you have some basic attributes. So okay, so now that we know a bit of basics about Timeleaf, and so Timeleaf is going to be used to render the views in Spring. I asked ChatGPT to teach me Timeleaf with a simple Spring Boot app example. So let's go through this. Okay. Generate a Spring Boot project. We can use Spring Initializer to create the project. We're going to use these 3 dependencies. We're going to call this Timeleaf demo. Jar 17 or higher, and then directory structure like so. Then we'll define the user model. So one thing I've come to realize is we often start with the user model. So Timeleaf demo, start with user model. So I'm just gonna save this as my notes for org and okay, so the user model has attributes, a constructor, getters and setters. These getters and setters can be replaced with Lombok expressions, so I'll probably do that. Get a bit more hands-on with Lombok. And instead of com.example, I like to use ca.shrikar. So the reason I do that is because I own the domain srikr.ca. Srikr Shrikar is my first name. Casey is my preferred name, so there we go. That's the reason I do that. Okay, so after model in a previous example, we used repository and then service because we were interacting with the H2 database. But in this case, we're going to create the user controller. Now create a user controller that will handle the request and pass the user data to the Timeleaf template. So here we're directly creating the controller, and this controller has users, so we'll probably be creating a users.html. Then this model will be a Spring TimeLeaf demo model. Oh, Spring Framework models, UI.model. So this model takes in a model, and we're going to have a list of users as the attribute. So here, this is a table, a thread, table row, table headers. In the table body, again table rows and table data. And configure application properties, timely cache to false, and run the application. And some CSS to make this look pretty. Okay, this should be very straightforward. Let's get this going. Okay, so Spring Initializer, Maven Java. So I'm going to change the group to oops. Okay, TimeLeaf demo project for working with TimeLeaf. Okay, Java archive, and because I have Java 21 installed, let's select Java 21, add dependencies, Spring Web, so we can use Spring MVC. Then we need TimeLeaf for template engine, and let's get DevTools for live reload. Okay, let's generate this, put it in code demo repository, and then go to desktop, code, TimeLeaf demo, right here. Okay, and then let's open this with IntelliJ. Use this window. Okay, so first thing, okay, it's TimeLeaf demo application. Okay, so the first thing they ended up creating was a model. So let's see, did we have yeah, there's a model directory, there's a controller directory. So it's best to create a package, a model. Oh, lowercase. Do not yet. No. Oh, Shift F6 for rename. Okay. New package controller. Okay, so inside the model, let's have a new class called the user.java. So it's just a user model, and here we have these are the attributes: ID, first name, last name, and email. The constructors. So we can use Lombok for this. Oh, I should have added when you are starting with Spring Initializer, it's usually a good idea to add Lombok. If you don't, then we can get Lombok nevertheless. So just have to figure out add Lombok to Spring Boot project, and so we just need this dependency. Okay, so we copy this dependency and then we put it in form.xml in the dependencies list. Okay, not sure what scope means. Pretty sure the rest of them are self-explanatory. Let's go to Maven and download sources. So once we do that, we should be able to use Lombok annotation. So at getters, okay, I need to refer to my previous application to look at what exactly needs to be done. So let me open this in a new window, and then I remember adding Lombok here. Okay, so it's the same. It's the same to me in terms of oops, sorry. Okay, so on the left we have a time deep demo, and the right we have an older project that I was working on. So yeah, the provided looks good to me. Scope. So I think I need our getter, setter, and um, no args constructor. But we don't need a no args constructor, so all I think we need is just the getter and the setter. So let's go and add getter and setter. And usually it tells me the issue is uh, and add lombok to class path and reload maven and import class. Okay, so here did it add lombok again? Yeah, it did add lombok again twice. So let's go with what IntelliJ added for us, and I'm choose this. Okay, go back to user. So this should give us all the getters and setters where all the private attributes that we have. And we do not need a noargs constructor, I think, because I don't see a noargs constructor here. Noargs constructor is one of the requirements of the JPA repository, which is why we have provided it in the previous code. There. Okay, so next is the user controller. So let's create a user controller. Okay, for the user controller, we have a get mapping users and get users model. Okay, so we have this code. We'll need to run some import statements. So get mapping from let me copy the import statements. So we are importing the user. So this will be a little different because my package name is different. Model.user. Then the add controller is so this user controller bean is annotated with add controller. So there's a get mapping for slash users, and here we have a model that we are passing this get users method. Then these are longs, so long data type, as we specified here. The ID is a long. Okay. Okay, now for the interesting part. So since we have return users, so here inside template we'll have a new HTML file. This will be called users, and so this is going to be the main timeleaf template that we will need for users. So this has a link to a style sheet which will provide inside static, then CSS, and we'll call that style.css. Okay, so then the users.html has a link to the style sheet. We covered that. Any so ph colon href at so what this does is if you have a link element, link. So this is called an opening tag and is a closing tag, and in a link tag, um, this rel is a attribute, and there's usually another attribute called href. Um, href equal to, and then here's where you would put something like dot style dot css. So this timeleaf colon href, it evaluates this statement and replaces this href with whatever this gets evaluated to, according to the documentation. So glad I remember that now. I'll definitely forget this in the future. So th colon href is equal to @. So anything with @ is you can either have a relative URL path or like an absolute path. So this looks like an absolute path because it's starting with like slash. So this is automatically going to go into the CSS directory and get the style.css file from there. So that's the header. Then this is the body. Okay, in the body, the most interesting part is the timeleaf iteration to look through users. So these users are provided in the model. So model, you have users. So you have model and we have users. So this model dot add attribute and then you're calling the attribute name users, and you're passing this list of users to the attribute name users, which is what you're referring to over here. Okay, model and attribute is users. Okay, so that should be everything, and we should be able to run the Pineboot demo application. Let's see if this works. Enable annotation processing. Okay, Tomcat started. Let's go to localhost 8080. Ah, no static resource. No resource found exception. Okay. Users.html. Users. User controller. Okay. Oh, slash users. There we go. Okay. So there was no mapping for the root directory. So if we change this to be like so and reload this, then we don't need the slash users at the end. That was what was causing the issue. Okay, so there we go. This is the list of users. Yeah, and that's it for a gentle introduction to Timeleaf. Thank you.